Hey everybody, and happy spooky season to one and all. Teching 101 here alongside Barry the Brick. Okay, you know what's crazy? I just realized, on top of getting Loki's sad crybaby backstory, we're also getting Blackbeard's sad crybaby backstory. It's nuts, isn't it? The God Valley flashback has something for everyone, I'll tell you what. We're getting so many different perspectives. We found out Wang was a dick, and we're getting a lot of sad crybaby backstories. Except, notably, not Shanks. Because Shanks and Shamrock never cried. Actually, wait a minute, no! Shamrock did cry in the last chapter when Matthew picked him up, alright? So he only started to cry when Matthew picked him up, one of the members of the Gods Knights. When Dragon was holding them, they didn't cry. Oda made a point to mention that, so I don't know if that's going to be relevant. By the way, I'm still, wondering if there's going to be another switcheroo with the kids, where it turns out that the one Matthew was holding was Shanks this whole time, but ends up getting switched. I don't really know how that's going to go. But, yeah, Shanks did not cry. He got knocked out, but he didn't cry. And we also see Blackbeard and his mom, Eris, who did cry. It was a very rough day for them, okay? So we're going to go through Blackbeard's, history, his story really quick. All the stuff in the timeline that we really understand and see if this better shapes the man right now, who is essentially set up to be one of the final bosses of One Piece. You know, that's one of the great things I love about this story. There is not just, one obvious final enemy for the Straw Hats to defeat. I mean, yeah, you could just say Emu, right? But the way they're going to fight Emu is probably not going to be a conventional fight, just of the way that Emu kind of works. If you could defeat Emu through conventional means about just rolling into the Room of Flowers and beating the shit out of them, pretty sure Rocks would have done that already, so there has to be some other way to fight against Emu. But we also have Blackbeard, who has to fight against, the Blackbeard crew is an evil, opposite, negative dimension version of the Straw Hats, so they're gonna have to fight each other. Then we have, Akainu, there's a grudge match there, Luffy or Sabo have to fight against Akainu, and there's a lot of other characters as well, but Blackbeard is certainly on the roster as one of the final villains, and then if we find out Shanks turns out to be evil, then he's gonna be on that too. But yeah, so Blackbeard was born 40 years ago, which means all of the stuff going on right now at God Valley, he's only 2 years old, and so that trauma is going to stick around for a while, let me tell you, all right? So Rocks, I mean, at least it seems wasn't a completely horrible father. He was still a pirate. He went around. He murdered a lot of people. He stabbed children, but he cared about his own son and his wife, cared about them enough to make sure they weren't on Hachinosu, because it's a very rough and tumble pirate place. Yes, Rocks was essentially the king of Hachinosu. He was the ruler of that place, but it's not the kind of environment you want to raise children in. Speaking of that, by the way, the flashbacks we got back at Whole Cake Island with Katakuri and Brule, remember how Brule was attacked by a bunch of pirates and Katakuri rage mode and went to go fight them and everything like that? That was most likely on Hachinosu. So Big Mom really didn't give a shit. Right now, are we literally looking at Rocks being a better parent than Big Mom? I guess so. Anyway, he's yeah, I don't want my kids growing up on Hachinosu. He only has the one kid, although maybe there's more. But he's I don't want my son growing up here, so let me send you guys back home to my homeland, my hometown, God Valley, where nothing bad ever happens. Nah, Eris, listen, you'll be safe there. Listen, I grew up there my whole life. It's not affiliated with the world government. They don't even know that place exists. It's out in some corner of the West Blue. It has no notability or notoriety or significance whatsoever. Just take little baby Teach out there and everything will be fine. And Eris was I don't know about this. This is oh, it'll be fine. It'll be good. It'll be all right. I'll come and visit every now and then. I'm not a deadbeat father. All right, so, yeah, I mean, how was Rocks supposed to know? From what we do understand, God Valley was a place that the world government didn't apparently know about for a long time until Garling just happened to wind up there one day, and then, oh, the nail in the coffin. But at any rate, they went back home, where also there was a lot of members of the Davy clan. Rocks' real name is Davy D. Zebak, and it makes sense that if he was born and raised there, he wouldn't be the only part of the Davy clan, the only member of the Davy clan on that island. island, right? So there was at least like 9, 10, maybe a few more members of the Davy clan, some of which might have been buccaneers living on that island. And so when the government found out about it, when Garling went there, he was like, oh, I found something ridiculous that the Great One will surely be pleased with, right? Okay, so then the God Valley hunting contest occurs. The celestial dragons all arrive there, round up all the members of the, pretty much everybody, the citizens of the town. Garling stabs the mother of Shanks and Shamrock, and Blackbeard and his mom Eris get thrown in chains up on stage as one of the prized rabbits, the super rare rabbits of the tournament, right? And we see a scene of Teach, 2-year-old baby Teach, looking out into the crowd and just seeing these evil demons of the celestial dragons hurling tomatoes and axes and knives at them, just like that visceral hatred. And his mother Eris is trying to shield, is like, no, please don't look, it's okay, we'll make it through this. But he saw that and was scarred for life. We know he makes it out of this, but we also know he was living as an orphan for a time before Whitebeard finally picked him up. That occurred 28 years ago when Marshall D. Teach was 12, okay? So at some point, it happens here. Maybe they make it off God Valley, maybe they don't, but at some point, Eris is going to die, and Blackbeard is going to be on his own at some random island, or maybe he goes from island to island, kind of like how Robin had to live after the destruction of O'Hara. You know, actually, there's a lot of parallels to this. Actually, some parallels to Orochi. I was going to bring that up as well, the Kurozumi family, considering they were, like, headhunted at Wano. And, you know, that's how Orochi had to basically grow up living in poverty and hiding away, you know, making sure nobody knew his real name until Higurashi and Seimimaru eventually found him and set up that whole plan to take over the country, right? And so that was sort of Orochi's backstory there. And so you can kind of definitely see that same parallel with Blackbeard, where especially if his mom ends up dying in a very brutal way, and his dad is also gone. Rox purportedly dies at God Valley. He met his end there. Still think we're going to get a twist on that. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, you know, you could see the hatred of Blackbeard in the same way of Orochi, of like, you know, those sons of bitches are gonna pay someday kind of deal, right? You know, I'm gonna find the Yami Yami No Mi. I'm gonna get the power of darkness, and I'm going to rule the world, right? And dethrone all the celestial dragons and wreck Marijuan. You could see that, okay? So he's 12 years old. He's living on some random island in poverty. That's when Whitebeard's ship shows up. Now, I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. Whitebeard should definitely have noticed there is a similarity between Rox and Teach. They look very similar, right? Now, keep in mind, though, we also now know about a bunch of other members of the Davy clan on God Valley. So they might also, you know, they would be members of the same family as Rox. They might, you know, bear similar appearances and everything like that. Like, it's very likely that some of the people on the stage that we saw a few chapters ago, those could have been, like, Rox's, like, uncles or, you know, cousins or something like that. You know, they're all part of the same family kind of deal, right? I think at the very least, Whitebeard had the suspicion that Marshall D. Teach was actually a member of the Davy clan, all right? And Whitebeard was the kind of guy to not really give a shit about somebody's backstory in terms of their family. It's like, you're joining my crew, you'll be part of our family. Welcome to your new family kind of thing, right? We had the scene with Ace sitting down with Whitebeard talking about how, like, you know, Ace reveals that, you know, my father was Roger this whole time, and Whitebeard's like, huh, really? Roger had a kid. What do you know? Glug, glug, glug. And then Ace is there, like, not expecting that reaction, and he's like, well, doesn't that change how I am? You know, I'm cursed with the blood of the Pirate King, or aren't you going to look at me differently? Like, you fought him. And you know, Whitebeard was just like, huh? Doesn't matter who your dad is. It doesn't matter. It depends on who you are. Who do you want to be, right? Like, that sort of deal, right? And so that's how Whitebeard ran his crew. That's how his family operated and everything like that. And a lot of orphans found their way on Whitebeard's ship and looked at him as a father. Probably the same deal with Marco. Probably the same thing with Marco and Jozu. They were also orphans and children, then they ended up on the crew, right? Same thing with Teach. So Whitebeard might have known, might have had a suspicion, might have been like, you kind of look like Rox, you might be a member of the Davy clan, but I don't see any particular reason why Whitebeard would have told him. Now, if Marshall D. Teach went up to Whitebeard at one point and was like, you know who I am, really? Do you know who my dad is, kind of deal? And so Whitebeard might have been like, yeah, I know, but it doesn't matter. It depends. He might have given the same speech he gave to Ace to Blackbeard, except Blackbeard maybe took it a different way, right? It's really kind of sad when you think about it, because even despite all the horrible things that happened to Teach when he was a child on God Valley and everything, and living on his own and being an orphan for so long, you see this moment where he's adopted by Whitebeard and spends several decades on his ship, and he has friends and family and things like that, right? You might just say that, like, hey, Teach, I know you're traumatized and you want to, bring down everything and all that stuff, and you need this devil fruit. You have, like, this myopic sight where it's like, I'm going to get the Yami Yami No Mi, the power of darkness, and rule the world, yes, ha ha. Maybe just stay on the ship. You have a family, you have a father, you have brothers and, sisters and stuff that care about you. I guess there really weren't that many women on Whitebeard's crew. There were the nurses. They have the nurses there. But Whitey Bay was a member of Whitebeard's crew back in the day. It's just there weren't any women by the time, like, Marineford happened, okay? But at any rate, he had a family. So it's just like, dude, I mean, like... And also, they're still pirates, right? Like, they're going out into sea, they're fighting the Marines and everything like that. So, if Teach had any, hey, we got to make the government pay for what they did to me kind of stuff. Well, all right, you already are doing that. You're already a member of, like, a Yonko crew, right? But no, Teach, throughout his life, he was dedicated. At seemingly a young age, he knew exactly, he's like, no, this is the way I'm going to get my revenge, and this is the way it's going to happen, and I don't care who I have to stab along the way in order to make it work, right? That's just what I'm going to do. So we could do a thing quite easily where maybe even at the age of 2, Blackbeard remembered who his mom was and remembered who his dad was, or we could do a thing where he finds Rox's, like, logbook, or maybe Rox left a journal with him or something, like, here you go, son, always remember where you came from, who your family was. It might have been something of that nature, right? From what we understand, Rox did not have the Yami Yami No Mi. Maybe his mom had the Yami Yami No Mi. Maybe, possibly. Maybe he wanted the fruit in one part to, use this devastating Logia to take over the world and, dethrone the world government and everything, and eventually take out Emu, if he knows about Emu, which seems like it's very likely that he does. Or maybe he just wanted it because that was his mom's power or something like that. I don't think she had it, because I feel like that would have been able to fight back quite a bit if she had a Logia of that notoriety. He knows he needs that power for something, though, right? And it really doesn't seem like Rox had it. It's mentioned Rox had a very peculiar swordsmanship style. Every time he swung his sword, it was like a cannon going off, but it doesn't really seem to fit with the Yami Yami powers, so that must have been something else. Or it could have just been something specific for Rox, like his hockey was just so powerful, like every sword swing augmented it or something. I'm thinking it's a Devil Fruit ability, but not a Devil Fruit ability he himself has. Maybe the sword has the Devil Fruit power, okay? Could be something of that nature, right? Okay, so... he knows who his father is. He knows that he needs the Yami Yami No Mi, and he scours the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia for it. And it's mentioned that, like, he realized the best chance he has of getting that fruit is being on Whitebeard's crew. So that whole, like, chance meeting with Whitebeard, on that port town, and then Teach running into him, that might have not have been as much of a coincidence as it seems. It's possible Teach could have been like, I'm going to go after Whitebeard's crew specifically because he's such a powerful, pirate, and would have been maybe a Yonko at this time. And maybe he, if Rox did leave behind a logbook or a record or a message for Teach, it might be like, oh yeah, Whitebeard was a member of my crew and he was really reliable and really powerful, and maybe Teach was like, ooh, this is the guy, and he really wants a family and stuff. So maybe Teach, even at that age of 12, was like, I need to find Whitebeard, and I need to give him a sob story, tell him my crybaby backstory, and then he'll let me on his crew, and then I can have the best shot at finding this Logia, the Yami Yami No Mi. So that might have been part of his, like, Machiavellian scheme even all the way back then, okay? So he's on Whitebeard's crew for quite some time. 26 years ago, when Blackbeard was 14, is when Odin joined Roger's crew, and they had that big battle on the island, okay, when Odin was there and then fought everybody, and and then Roger, and then eventually Odin leaves, and so we see them there. This is also the scene where Shanks and Buggy look over at Teach and is like, oh, hey, he didn't sleep that entire time. Those last, 3 nights that we fought, didn't go to bed a single time. They say he's a monster. And when you really think about it, it might just have nothing to do with devil fruit abilities or having multiple personalities or multiple souls. Might just be trauma. Might just be trauma why he can't sleep. He just has really bad insomnia. Okay, but it also might have something to do with the fact he can have 2 devil fruits, which probably has more to do with him being a member of the Davy clan, anything with him specifically. Maybe all members of the Davy clan can have multiple devil fruits. Maybe they can have 2, maybe they can have 3. This also still fits with the idea that if a normal person eats more than 1 devil fruit, they explode. It seems like Vegapunk did a lot of research on that. Vegapunk could have been fudging the numbers, but I'm thinking, no, this has been tested before, and the vast majority, like 99.9% of people in the One Piece planet, on Blue Planet, if they eat 2 devil fruits, they explode. But that small percentage of the Davy clan don't. Might be the exemption there, okay? Now, there's something interesting. We know that Blackbeard fights against Shanks at one point and gives him the scar. Back before he had his Devil Fruit ability, Blackbeard fought with, like, Wolverine Claw-type weapons, okay? This had to have happened between 20 and 12 years ago. So there's an 8-year-long window when that fight could have occurred, okay? Between when Blackbeard was 20 years old and when he was 28 years old. All right, don't know exactly when during that time period, but it was during that time period Shanks and Blackbeard fought, and Shanks mentioned to Whitebeard, hey, I didn't let my guard down. I wasn't, like, drunk at the time or something like that. I was on my guard, and he was able to pull that. So that's why Shanks was kind of giving Whitebeard a warning about Blackbeard. I want you to stop Ace because there's more to him than meets the eye, all right? I didn't get this scar by being careless. Yeah, all right? So then a lot of nothing happens. Well, stuff that we don't know about. Blackbeard was on the crew when Ace was on the crew, and, you know, when they were thinking about going and fighting against Kaido at Wano, talking about how, like, you know, Odin, oh yeah, we were gonna go visit Wano and see, but, like, we don't want to get a lot of civilian casualties involved and everything, and it took a while for the news to reach us. You know, like, Marco and Ace were talking about this. Blackbeard was there in the background as well, you know, mentioning, I think he actually mentioned, like, I'm looking for a devil fruit or something like that, right? But it was 2 years ago. So this was, like, right before Luffy, you know, started his journey, if not, like, already when Luffy left Dawn Island, that Thatch picks up the Yami Yami No Mi, Blackbeard kills him, takes the power, and leaves. Now, along the way, I think it had to have happened a little bit before that, because Blackbeard also mobilized a crew together very quickly. We know that Thatch got the devil fruit, Blackbeard murdered him, he leaves with the fruit, gets the Yami Yami No Mi powers, then he builds a crew together of Burgess, Doc Q, Van Augur, and Lafitte as his original Blackbeard pirate crew. Then they go to Drum Island for a time and wreak some havoc there. And then I think it was mentioned, I think Dalton mentioned it was like a few months from that incident by the time the Straw Hats got there. I think it was like 6 months or some such. So yeah, this had to have occurred before Luffy set out from Dawn Island, but like a few months prior to that, okay? And so Blackbeard put that crew together very quickly, which makes me think of, like, was Blackbeard already, like, working on this on the side, like, you know, like, meetings, like, Burgess and Lafitte and Van Augur, and, like, here's the plan, say, ha, ha, ha. You know, eventually when I find that devil fruit, I'm going to contact all of y'all, and then we're going to start a big pirate crew. It's going to take over the entire Grand Line, right? Might have been something along those lines there, right? But 2 years ago is when that happens, and everything from that point onward is stuff that we already know. You know, he fights against Ace at Bonaro Island, and he meets Luffy at Jaya, and then everything at Impel Down, and then Marineford, he steals the Gura Gura no Mi, and, you know, all that stuff occurs. We know from there. Payback War during the time skip, now he's a Yonko lording over Pirate Island after he ousted Ochoku. Not even deserving of the name Wang anymore. He's just Ochoku. But what exactly does this mean when it comes to Rox's will, especially the promise Rox made to Emu, like, I will return here one day, and Blackbeard's own ambitions? Because this is like a messy soup right now, right? You could say Blackbeard is his own person, and he's carrying out the will of his father. Either it be the will that he learned on his own, maybe he pieced it all together himself, or Rox left behind a journal. Or you could say that something of Rox still lives on in Teach, like Rox's soul or his spirit, his ambition, something, you know, is like literally part of Teach's body. And so maybe that's where like the multiple soul theory comes from, and that's where the ambition comes from there, right? Or does it have nothing to do with that whatsoever? And it's just maybe Blackbeard learned about the history of the Davy clan. Maybe Rox left some stuff behind, not just from his own life and what he did. And it's like, oh, I made it to Marie-Joie one day, and I also reached the Room of Flowers, and there's a shadowy ruler of the entire world. Son, it's up to you to eventually, you know, save the world or something, right? Or it could have been like, it was mentioned in an SBS that if Blackbeard lived in our world, the profession he would have would be archaeologist or like historian. I think archaeologist was the way Oda worded that. So maybe, you know, Blackbeard went off on his own and he was studying things, right? And then he learned about the history of the Davy clan as much as he could learn. The long history of the Davy clan and how they were oppressed and you know, wiped out as often as they, you know, were found out by the world government and everything. Probably learned about a lot of other things too, like about the Lunarians maybe, and the Third Eye tribe, and like any tribe, or the Buccaneers, anybody that like the world government hates and they eliminate, and the Davy clan was on that list, okay? And so maybe that's why Blackbeard has this, on top of the trauma he dealt as a child, also like, oh, so my clan, the Davy clan, has been oppressed ever since the time of the Void Century. Well, this is going to be, you know, me rectifying that sort of deal, right? This will be my revenge, not just for my personal trauma, but also like my clan, you know, all the way back from 900 years ago or something. Could be that as well. Certainly does not justify all of the horrible things Blackbeard has done up until now. But it's like with anything. We're learning more about the character, of why they ended up the way they ended up. And that is very important. And it's interesting to see the way that Oda's depicting this. Just all the different sad backstories we're getting at once. But anyway, let me know down below what you think about this, and what exactly is going on inside of Blackbeard's head, if he has like multiple voices in there all talking to him at once, or if it's just him with like a plan that he's orchestrated from the time he was a little kid all the way up till now, and he's 100% dedicated and he's not changing it whatsoever. Doesn't matter who he has to betray or kill to get what he wants, all right? And it might also come down to him breaking into the Room of Flowers, and then Emu's there and he's just like, man, I really need to get like a lock on that door. And then Blackbeard's there and he's like, say ha ha, told you I'd be back again, Emu, this time I know how to kill you. And Emu's like, okay, here we go. Enter final boss music. Emu-sama! Sephiroth! And then final battle, Final Fantasy style starts. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching. That's the video. Hope you all enjoyed. This will be Techie 101 signing out. Later, everybody. Whose sad crybaby backstory are we going to get next? Vote now.